And we have a good one for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me when we're ready to go.
Yep.
All set. All right, welcome. I'm Senator Kevin Evart from District 12, Senate District 12, and today we'll be holding a meeting of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And before we get started, I'll read through the checklist to ensure that the meeting that we're holding is in compliance with the right to know law. And as chair of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency orders number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we're providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We're utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting, and all members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform and has access contemporaneously to watch and listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube via phone by the following directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the people to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remote.senate@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. And please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And finally, let's get started with the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. And when each member states their presence, please also state that where they are and if there's anybody else in the room with them during the meeting, which is also required under the right to know law. I'll start the roll call with Senator Gray.
I am James Gray, in District 6. I'm here in my home in Rochester, New Hampshire, and I'm alone in this room.
Senator Waters.
Senator David Waters, District 4. I am at my home in Dover, alone in this room.
And I see that I'm the only other senator here. Senator Kevin Evart here in my office in Nashua, and I am alone except with an occasional puppy yelling out. So with that, welcome everybody, and we're going to get started with HB 235. And we'll listen to the prime sponsor.
Okay, the prime sponsor is Representative Mark Pearson. Representative Pearson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hey, there we are. How is that?
Sounds good. We need some bumper music.
Da, 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 da. Well, this is Representative Mark Pearson. I'm chairman of Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee. Had a wonderful time this morning, and I'm now glad to be here with you. This bill is one of two proposed water bills that a group of us put forward in the last session. One made it through into law. The other one died a COVID death, but has been resurrected for such a time as this. This is part one of the bill. The bill that came to you from me is part one. Additional materials regarding PFOAs have been added to this bill. So let me just speak to part one, which was my original bill. A couple of summers ago, it seemed that a large commercial water pumping company had worked in such ways as the wells of numbers of citizens in Hampstead dried up. I met with the various senators and representatives from our area, and we brought on board Leonard or Lee Serapis, who is also waiting to testify. He's a hydrologist. He's a water expert. And we all worked together to come up with something that we thought was fair to the water companies. We don't want to put commercial water companies out of business, but also fair to the stakeholders who shouldn't have their wells go dry because perhaps a local company is over pumping. So that led to two bills. One made it, and this one is back at you today. Commissioner Scott of DES was behind what we did, and we think that this will give a balanced treatment going forward because it's going to happen in places other than Hampstead. And that would be my testimony.
Okay. Questions from the committee? No? Seeing none. Thank you, Representative, and we'll listen to testimony. Who do we have in support or against?
Okay, the next person I have is Mike Wimsatt from DES. Mike, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. Actually, I wanted to sign up to testify on the proposed amendment to this bill. And I believe there are other DES staff who will be presenting testimony on the core bill. So I will politely take my leave until my appointed time.
Okay. Also from DES, I have Brandon Kernan. Brandon, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Brandon Kernan. I'm the administrator of the Drinking Water Groundwater Bureau at Department of Environmental Services. And the department supports Part 1 of this bill, House Bill 235, as was passed by the House. Originally, when it was introduced to the House, the department had a lot of concerns with the bill, but the House amended the bill, and we support the amended version as proposed today in Part 1. The bill would allow us to ensure that impacts to private wells don't occur when there's a small community well being developed nearby, and a small community well is being pumps less than 40 gallons a minute or 57,600 gallons a minute. And we'll note we don't see a lot of problems with these type of wells causing impacts to other water users. And when we do, we've generally been able to work it out. But this language would clarify that the department has the authority to make sure those adverse impacts to other private wells are addressed. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Welcome, Senator Perkins Quokka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to be a couple moments late.
That's fine. And I assume you're home alone or in your office alone?
Yes, sir. I am in a home in Stratham alone in the room.
Thank you. Any questions for Brandon? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person I see is Leonard Cerapos. Leonard, you should be able to unmute. You're on the phone. You might need to dial *6.
Are you there, Brandon? I mean, Leonard. Hit #6 or *6. *6. There you
All
go.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for taking my testimony. My name is Leonard Cerapos. By way of background, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Hampshire and a registered professional hydrologist in groundwater with the American Institute of Hydrology. I've been actively practicing in these fields for 45 years, most often working for or representing industry. In instances where conditions warrant, I have also represented the public. As you've heard earlier, House Bill 235 addresses gaps in New Hampshire's current regulations for new community wells that will pump up to 57,600 gallons per day. In summary, here's what the bill will provide. And what I'd like to do is first read from Commissioner Scott's letter regarding the same bill which was brought forward to this committee last year. The Commissioner's bill states, this bill would authorize the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to establish criteria within the administrative rules for new small community water supply wells to ensure that if these wells cause an adverse impact to nearby private water supply wells, the DES can require the owner to perform an investigation and mitigation. Later in the letter, the commissioner goes on to say that small community water supply wells are not subject to requirements to demonstrate that before using the well, no adverse impacts to surrounding water users or resources will occur. Currently, NHDES does not have authority to require that a small community water supply well applicant or owner mitigate potential adverse impacts to private water supply wells in the event that such impacts occur. This bill will address that gap. To add some perspective, New Hampshire's Groundwater Protection Act prohibits 11 specific adverse impacts from a new community well pumping 40 gallons per minute or more. It provides none of this protection for a well pumping 39 gallons a minute. This bill will provide some protection. One might ask, do the people of New Hampshire need this protection? In thinking through this question, please consider the following. First, New Hampshire's population is growing, and with it, water demand causing greater stress on our aquifers. In September 2020, the Concord Monitor published an article quoting DES stating that over 4,000 new wells are being installed in New Hampshire each year. Second, water use trends are increasing, for example, for lawn irrigation, causing greater stress on our aquifers. And I'd like to read briefly again from the commissioner's letter. The increasing density of development within the state and the use of small community water supply systems at subdivisions to increase land development increases the likelihood for these impacts, and that is adverse impacts to homeowners, in the future. Third, New Hampshire is experiencing more severe drought, which brings another type of stress to our aquifers. Conditions last year demonstrated how real these impacts can be. Taken together, this legislation makes sense to allow continued development of our groundwater resource in a responsible manner while protecting residents with their own wells. Thank you, and I'd be pleased to take any questions the committee may have.
Questions from the committee? I do. You said that this will bring in my own words, it'll bring into play some wells that may be producing 39 gallons per minute or less if it has an effect on the local private wells.
Yes, that's correct. That is the state's definition of a small well. Anything that is a community well that pumps at a rate of 39 gallons per minute or less.
How about? Okay, or less. Okay, so I do have a. How will you determine that? By the pressure in, or how are you going to determine that? Say a mile up the road or 2 miles up the road. How does that work?
The impact was the result of that well?
Yeah, I mean, how do you determine to what degree it will affect the private wells?
Well, the way this is written right now is that the DES will be developing those rules. So that would be left in the DES's hands to determine. For a large well, which this is certainly not contemplated, there is a fairly proactive modeling effort taken to estimate where impacts might occur. The DES, I am sure, will adopt a much more scaled down version and to have some assessment or consideration made. And then I think if an impact were to arise, as this was the case in Hampstead, it was actually the homeowners themselves that undertook the assessment to make the correlation of the impact to the well operation.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony and appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The last person I have signed up is Natch from the Municipal Association.
Natch? welcome.
Hi, this is Nietzsche Gray from
H.
NHMA. I'm actually here to talk about the amendment, not the bill itself.
Okay, well, we'll have you back in a minute then.
Thank you.
All right.
Senator Evart, that is everyone that I had signed up on this bill. If there's anyone else, they can raise their hand either in the Zoom or dial *9 if they're on the phone. I am not seeing any hands, Senator Evart.
All right, thank you, Cameron. So I guess we'll move to the amendment.
All right. I don't have a separate sign-up sheet for the amendment, so if you'd like to speak on the amendment, if you could raise your hand, again, you can do that in the Zoom or dial *9.
Is the
I know
prime,
Mike, I'm sorry, go ahead, Senator Evart.
I'm sorry, Cameron, is the prime sponsor of the amendment available?
Here I am.
Thank you. Would you like to speak before we hear your testimony, Senator? Or?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm here to introduce the amendment to House Bill 235. This, as you may recall, covers what we did 2 years ago, but I guess actually Senator Evart and Senator Perkins Poco would not recall, but Senator Gray will recall that 2 years ago we passed the PFAS loan fund that was established to help municipalities bear the costs of remediation of drinking water treatment and wastewater treatment due to PFAS, and also provided a mechanism whereby, were we to receive suit settlement money, how that money would be deposited and used in coordination with the Drinking Water Trust. I want to thank Senator Morse and Josh Elliott for developing this language, which was brought to us by the DES, asking for some tweaks to the legislation that we did pass in terms of some of the languages and the references, but with one key change, which is quite related to the issue of private wells, which we were just discussing. We had talked all along in the intent of the original bill that there would be a mechanism found for municipalities to help private wells, perhaps through the existing Drinking Water Trust Fund and funds that might come in through a lawsuit settlement. It was felt that it was good to make that explicit. And what the kind of core of this amendment then is that it's saying that rather than just community water systems, that now also municipalities can apply to this fund if there are private drinking water wells within the municipality that have been impacted by PFAS. So that was all on the intent. Now it's made more explicit in the language. There are a couple of other definitional changes and reference changes that are needed, and applicable PFAS standards, which covers what needs to be referenced in terms of what the state has done to adopt its standards here as well. I know that we have a letter from DES, and I'm sure that Mr. Wimsatt will be available as well, or others to testify to this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Senator. And Cameron, are we ready for testimony?
Yep, so Mike Wimsatt should be able to unmute right now.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Wimsatt. I serve as Director of the Waste Management Division for New Hampshire DES. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Amendment 1218S to Senate Bill, or to House Bill 235. So Senator Waters, summarized it very, very well, and it does do a number of sort of housekeeping things, but the main thrust of this bill is to address ensuring that municipalities who don't happen to operate a water system or own or operate a water system are eligible to access these funds. We have a number of communities in southern New Hampshire where significant numbers of folks, private wells, have been impacted by PFAS contamination. And in many cases, those municipalities may want to provide some funding to either stand up their own water system or to actually just contribute towards the investment and expansion of existing water systems that are owned by others. And without this amendment, those municipalities would not be able to access these low interest funds. So that's the main thrust of this, and we're in full support of it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that may arise.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Cameron, you're in charge.
The only other hand I have is Natch from the Municipal Association.
Hello again, this is Nietzsche Gray from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. As you might imagine, we are in support of allowing municipalities to gain access to these funds. I don't think I really need to say more on that. There are some other technical changes that this bill enacts. Our understanding is that doesn't cause municipalities to have any kind of additional burdens or anything like that. This just gives DES some more flexibility in administering those funds and providing them. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And
Okay, I do have another hand from Representative Andy Reprenzolo.
welcome, Representative.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Okay. Actually, my testimony is actually in the form of will be a question, because I as the chair of the committee that will probably be receiving this this bill. When we speak of municipalities able to apply relative to private wells, will the private well owners be able to apply, or only can they have to go through the municipality? Can they, the private well owners, because that will be a question or a concern when this bill, should this bill come back to House Resources.
Senator Waters, do you know?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it might perhaps be helpful for Senator Morse and I to speak with you about it as well. But the original program did not explicitly provide for that option. It covered municipal water treatment systems and community water treatment systems, but there had been kind of an understanding that through the Drinking Water Trust Fund, the flexibility that they have, there would be an opportunity for private well owners to come forward. I think that what makes sense about doing it this way is that, if it's one well, it's probably several, given the way PFAS spreads. And so it seemed to make sense that those municipalities who were not operating municipal water systems, when they identified such a problem and could help identify which wells were being affected, that it would be, more powerful for them to be able to come forward as a municipality to receive the funds. And do note as well, Mr. Chairman, that in this program, there is a loan forgiveness provision, and then there's a loan payback provision should we receive a legal settlement for the suit that's underway. So there too, there's a rationale for the municipality being the applicant here.
How's that?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative.
Senator Evart, those are all of the hands that I have raised.
All right, I guess we'll close the hearing on this bill 235 as amended. And should we get into the next bill, or we can hear the next one?
I think we're a few minutes ahead of schedule.
We are. Is the committee comfortable about executing this? Okay.
Move to go into executive session.
Second.
Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yep.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
Senator Evard, yes. Is there a motion?
Move on to pass on the bill, and then we'll take the amendment right after.
Okay, is there a
I'll
second?
second what to pass, and I will move that we I move out to pass on the amendment.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka, Senator Perkins Quokka, You are muted.
Yes.
Okay, Senator Evart, yes. So does that cover both of those, the bill and the
No.
amendment? No?
Now I'll move on to pass as amended.
Okay. And
Actually,
second,
I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. I actually just got an email from Josh Elliott. I think there might be a small grammatical error to the amendment, so you might want to go back. I apologize for this. Hold on. I'll pull up the amendment and just show everybody.
well, we voted for the bill.
Oh, okay. All right.
No,
So now
we
you want-
voted for the amendment.
for the amendment.
So hold on. I apologize for this. 1 second.
Having voted on the prevailing side, I move to reconsider our vote on the amendment.
Thank you. Sorry about
Seconded.
that.
Senator Waters,
Senator,
Yes.
you really wouldn't need to do that. We would just further amend it.
Any way we ought to go. Thank you, Vice Chairman Gray. Yeah,
It'll be less votes if you just make
okay.
a new amendment.
So
So,
what do you need?
so if the committee looks at
Griffin.
the amendment, it should be on the screen, but if you look at page 1, line 10,
Yep.
it says perfluorinated chemicals and then a parentheses, a class of chemicals that are part of a larger group of chemicals called, but there's no parentheses. There's no second parentheses. So Josh Elliott sent me an email saying the line should just read, communities across the state have been impacted by perfluorinated contamination, period. Perfluorinated chemicals are a class of chemicals that are part of a larger group of chemicals called per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and then parentheses PFAS. Is that okay with everybody? I can certainly put that language on the screen, but just wanted to.
I'll move that as a committee amendment.
Senator Waters, before we do that, shouldn't the parenthesis be after PFAS, close parenthesis, and then have a second close parenthesis there?
I think
Right,
that
right.
he's proposing a different solution.
But what would
in the
happen to the
language.
rest of that clause where it says through no fault of their own?
Hold on, let me go back. True. If it's all right with the committee, I apologize for this. While we continue the hearings on the other bills, I will continue conversations with Josh about how the language should read. I'm sure Mike Wimsatt from DES might want to provide some input as well. So I'll try to work that out while we have hearings, and we might be able to exec it at the end of the committee today, if that's okay.
All right, I'll need a motion to move out of exec.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, Senator Gray,
Second. Oh, yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yes.
Senator Evart, yes. And so now we'll open up the hearing to 271.
Okay, and the prime sponsor, I believe, is Representative Rung. Representative Rung, you should be able to unmute.
Good afternoon. Can the committee hear me?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Avard and members of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. For those of you who are returning members of this committee, this bill is the same as last year's House Bill 1537, which as amended passed in the House on the consent calendar. Unfortunately, like the previous bill you heard today, it was laid on the COVID table in the Senate. Thus, it returns to you today. Nothing in this bill has changed from House Bill 1537 as amended, except for a minor amendment, which I'll go over. Its intent is to ensure New Hampshire statutes use consistent nomenclature for the class of chemicals known as PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, aligning New Hampshire terminology of this chemical class with national, international, and scientific reference. So you will see in HB 271 occurrences of PFC, which stands for perfluorinated chemicals, are replaced with PFAS. I want to read to you a statement issued by the US EPA. Quote, perfluorinated chemicals is a term that some scientists use to refer to the group of toxic chemicals that include PFOA and PFOS and other per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Organizations that have used the abbreviation PFCs, referring to perfluorinated chemicals, include EPA, US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the UN Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. EPA is now trying to use per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, rather than perfluorinated chemicals, PFCs, consistently to collectively describe PFOA, PFOS, and the other chemicals in this group. So that's their statement. I want to bring your attention to on page 2 of the bill, line 3, language is removed that limits the definition of PFAS to 18 compounds listed in EPA's method 537. Over 5,000 PFAS now exist, and new PFAS are invented constantly. Their definition should be based on their general molecular structure, not which ones were used in an analytical method, which could very well become obsolete with technological advancements. Now, in the House Resources Committee, which heard this bill a couple months ago, an amendment was passed to add, quote, peer-reviewed to section 6 to qualify the word study. The studies that are referred to in this bill would be validated by others in the scientific community. So I support that amendment, and I hope you support this bill. I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Questions from the committee? Representative, how did this fare in the House? Was it vote?
Yes, it voted ought to pass as amended. It was on the consent calendar.
Consent. Okay, great. Seeing no questions, thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it.
All right,
Cameron?
thank you.
The next person I have is David Creer. David, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is David Creer. I'm Director of Public Policy for the Business and Industry Association of New Hampshire. We don't have a position on the bill. We think updating the language to meet modern terminology is fine. The only concern that we really have is that that one section that Representative Rung was just talking about, page 2, starting on line 3, where they updated the definition so that PFAS means per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. The issue is this definition is quite broad at this point. So PFAS is a class of nearly 5,000 chemicals, many of which are inert and cause no issues with human health or environmental issues. And the problem is that if you're defining PFAS in this way, well, then every time you mention PFAS later on, it also means all PFAS chemicals. So this opens the statute now to possibility that, like for instance, emissions, testing requirements and all of that, you'll have to test for every single one of the nearly 4,000 PFAS chemicals, rather than just the 4 that are currently regulated by statute in the state. So we just think it would be better if that definition was limited to just those PFAS chemicals that are regulated either by state or federal statutes or regulations, just to kind of limit that and clear up any ambiguity that can be had by changing that definition. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you can have.
Thank you. I must have misheard something because I thought she said it was narrowed down to 17 or 7 specific types. Maybe I misheard that. How did the committee hear that?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
She pointed to page 2, lines 3 through 7, where the specific items were removed from the bill and then replaced with the information that's on the end of line 7, which is what I believe that the BIA is talking about. And David?
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna say that's exactly right. I think, and I don't want to, put words in her mouth, but what I think, what she was saying, and if I'm wrong, she can correct me. Hopefully I'm not. I think what she's saying is that the statute originally was only relative to those 17 because it specifically referenced paragraph 1.1 of the EPA document method 537. But because PFAS is more expansive, she wanted to expand what the original definition of PFCs was to include all of the PFAS chemicals. But that is the issue that we have, is that now it's too broad. We'd like to see it limited to just those that are otherwise regulated by state and federal agencies.
All right. Any further questions? And thank you, Senator Gray. Seeing none. Cameron?
The next person I have is Mindy Mesmer. Mindy, you should be able to unmute. Yep, there you go.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Mindy Mesmer, for the record, from Rye, New Hampshire, former representative for Rockingham County District, represented Rye and Newcastle. I'm also an environmental scientist, and I am signing in today in support of this bill. I do agree that this terminology needs to be updated. A few years ago, the industry has decided to rename PFCs to PFAS. And when this original bill went through, I happen to know intimately when this bill went through, the terminology was PFCs at the time. And that group of chemicals, which now actually the prior speaker wasn't aware that we now have more than 9,200 of these chemicals that fit within the PFAS umbrella. And this is just a house cleaning bill to update the terminology so the state is up with the current way that the industry refers to these chemicals. So I'm fully in support of the changes made here. I'd also like to, though, draw the committee's attention to something which we are a little bit concerned about, which I think was not intended in the original language of the bill. On page 2, line 18, where it starts, operation of the source may continue through the permitting, construction, and installation time period. I think there was an unintended consequence of this language that sort of ties the hands of our regulators, and we generally, as the House and the legislature, tries not to do that. So I would suggest an amendment that at the end of that line before the period, we insert something like unless otherwise determined by the department, to sort of allow them the flexibility and the ability to do what they should do in terms of protecting public health. So other than that, I'm fully in support of this bill and available for any questions.
Questions from the committee?
Where would those words go?
Line 17?
Line 18, I think it is, starting with the sentence, operation of the source, and put it at the end of the sentence. Operation of the source may continue through permitting, construction, and installation time period unless otherwise determined by the department.
So that's page 2.
Yes,
Yep.
Correct, page 2.
Yeah, page 2.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Honorable Mesmer.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the only two individuals I have left, I believe, wanted to testify together, Jody Grimbliss and Stephen Rosado. So let me bring them both in here. Okay, Jody, you should be all set. And then let me find Stephen. And Steve, you should also be all set.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Thank you both. Thank you, committee. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Jody Grimbliss and I represent the American Chemistry Council. I have Steve Rosado here with me, also from ACC, who will speak to more of the specifics. But just a broad overview. ACC has been neutral on the policy of this bill. Again, it's looking to update terminology. So that's not something that we have any opposition to. We appreciate the House taking the consideration of the suggestion to include the terminology of peer-reviewed studies when it comes to the scientific studies in the area of this chemistry. But we would suggest the committee further review that definition on page 2, starting with line 3 of PFAS, which similarly to the Business and Industry Association, we might think is a little bit broad. Might have some other suggestions, and Steve will talk to those in a minute. In looking at other pieces of legislation or proposals dealing with PFAS, I've noted just there have been different definitions for PFAS in different proposals that have come forward. So for example, in 2019, Senator Waters may remember Senate Bill 257, we dealt with firefighting foams, and that has a specific definition and relates to actually a fluorinated carbon. In that definition of PFAS, this current law uses an EPA testing methodology to determine the definition of PFAS. Even in Senate Bill 146, Senator Waters, where you had some language about PFAS, there was a different definition of PFAS there. So I think we're just trying to look for something that's a little bit more narrow, a little bit more focused when we look at PFAS and how we're determining to legislate it in our laws. I've had a little bit of a hard time wrapping my head around how many chemicals there are, whether it's 1 or 17 or 5,000 or 9,000. And I'd heard this analogy of, kind of think of berries. There are berries out there that are strawberries and blueberries and raspberries, and they're good. But there are also some poisonous berries called ivy berries or holly berries or other berries, which are bad. So maybe a broad definition isn't the right way to go, but maybe looking at that characterization is a better way to move forward. So what I think I'll do is turn it over to Steve to speak a little bit to what the EPA and some of the other states are looking at in terms of definitions, and maybe that would be something for you to consider. Steve, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Steve Rosado, and I'm a senior director at the American Chemistry Council. The term PFAS encompasses thousands of substances with a wide range of physical, chemical, and biological properties. As has been acknowledged by many groups, most recently Vermont's Department of Environmental Conservation, it is not possible to treat this large groups of substances as a single class. Of the thousands of substances that have been identified, moreover, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has indicated that only about 600 are available commercially. More importantly, perhaps, EPA has developed validated analytical methods for a much smaller number of substances. While the state has been conducting stack testing for some time, EPA has not yet validated a method for measuring PFAS and source emissions. When completed, though, this method will be able to detect 50 individual PFAS. EPA has, however, developed validated methods for measuring a total of 29 PFAS in drinking water and has recently completed validation of analytical methods for 24 PFAS in ground surface and wastewater. To ensure accuracy and reproducibility of the data, we encourage the committee to limit the focus of HR 271 to those substances for which analytical techniques have been validated, consistent with the existing law. We understand, however, that there is concern about limiting the department to a smaller number of substances, although we note that the number of substances that can be detected with validated methods will continue to grow. As an alternative, we suggest a definition for PFAS that focuses on those substances likely to be found in water, excluding polymers, refrigerants, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals. The definition is derived from materials developed by the Interstate Research and Technical Council of the Environmental Council of the States, in which the Department of Environmental Services is an active participant. The definition we propose would restrict the bill to PFAS with 2 or more fully fluorinated carbon atoms, excluding polymers, gases, and volatile liquids. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Senator Waters.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm asking a question to you. Will we have Mr. Wimsatt available to us to talk about this?
Cameron?
Yep, he is still on the call.
Okay, thank you. I'll save my question until he comes back on.
Okay. Steve, could you send the committee some exact language as to what you would like to see?
Yes, I'd be happy to. We submitted some a brief statement, basically what I read that includes that language, but I'll send something very specific to the proposal, so it'll drop right in.
Which would be targeted towards the line 3?
Yes, I believe that's right. Yeah.
Line 3 or line 7. Okay. All right. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cameron.
Okay, so that is everyone I had signed up to speak. Representative Rung had their hand raised, and then Mike Wimsatt as well.
All right.
Representative Rung.
Thank you very much, committee. I just want to clarify something from the bill. If you look at the last section where it was amended, it's very important that we allow DES the latitude to review the body of scientific information on PFAS and have them make the determination about which ones need to be regulated or not. Just because some are regulated now and some aren't doesn't indicate whether some that exist may be found at some point to have environmental and health risks. So we need to, one of the things about this bill is that it accounts for any future scientific discovery about PFAS and allows DES the latitude to regulate them as they see fit.
Were you listening to testimony earlier with Stephen with regards to targeting the PFAS of 2 or more polymers that are be found in water, such as whatever you listed off there? Are you okay with that?
No, I'm not okay. I actually spent the beginning part of my career, probably about the first 10 or 12 years, as a research analytical chemist. And really, I think with all due respect, the American Chemistry Council is representing industry that faces regulation when their PFAS is determined and proven to be hazardous to the environmental or health. So there's a special interest there that I think is trying to cloud that this bill is really about just classifying a chemical that has an alkyl or a carbon backbone with carbon fluoral bonds coming off of that backbone in various functional groups. That's really all this bill does. If a molecule that fits that description, that falls within that class, is shown by peer-reviewed studies to cause a hazard, DES has the ability to regulate it. That's really all this bill does.
Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so Representative Rung, I note that last paragraph was created by an amendment from Chairman Reprenzolo. So would you suggest then that Chairman Reprenzolo's amendment essentially was done to clarify this issue, that DES is the group that is prepared to review things as need to be reviewed? It sets some standards there that you have to have scientific proof, and it also fairly clearly said that it's based on contaminant levels and health levels, so that, you know, that this Chairman Reprenzolo's amendment here really has taken care of the concerns that have been raised.
Yes, I agree with that, Senator Waters. And that's why I supported that amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't see Senator Chairman Reprenzolo's name on the amendment. I'm looking for that.
At the very bottom of the bill, Mr. Chairman, if you scroll down at the very bottom, it's that last page, but it is incorporated into the bill.
Okay, so is anybody else available?
So I have both Mike Wimsatt and Representative Reprenzolo.
Okay. Let's have Representative Reprenzolo first, please.
Representative, you should be all set.
Yep, just for the record, the amendment only put the word peer review in there at the request of one member of the committee, and it seemed just appropriate. It did not dig into any other issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Representative, are you still there?
Oh, hold on 1 second. I accidentally got rid of him. All right, Representative, sorry about that. You're back.
So Representative, are you comfortable with the meaning of the line 7 there, where PFAS means per polyfluor alkaline substance? I don't even know how to say that right. Polyfluora. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. You're muted, by the way, Representative. There we are.
As far as Mike being comfortable with that, we were comfortable with it at the time. However, this is new information, and I think it's. Sorry, I don't want to weasel out, but I think it's. I don't believe we heard that specific information.
Okay. When you're talking about information with regards to C. Rosado or Representative?
Yes, Mr. Rosado. We might have heard it, but I don't recall hearing it.
All right, oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you, Representative, Mr. Chairman. And
the last hand I have is for Mike Wimsatt.
Mike, welcome back.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, so I hadn't signed up on this bill, but I do want to make it clear the department supports this bill. I apologize. One of the hazards of remote hearings is that I was talking with Griffin Roberge about the other bill while some of that was being said by the others, so I didn't hear all of it. But the department doesn't have any reason to believe that this change, this is really just bringing the nomenclature in line with what is commonly accepted nomenclature across the country now. Impacts with regard to the air resources and the air rules really only apply when we set an ambient groundwater quality standard for one or more of these compounds. And right now we have 4 standards, and unless and until we were to set a new standard, which might well apply to one of the polyfluoroalkylated substances. There are polyfluoroalkylated substances out there that are not part of the old nomenclature, the PFC nomenclature, that are known to have potential health effects. We don't have enough information now to be setting standards for those, but we might well need to do that in the future. And all this would do would be to bring all the statutory language in line with the commonly accepted nomenclature.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mike, for coming back. So it was represented, 2 things were kind of basically represented, that since there are 9,000 of these, that DES couldn't possibly test every one of them or be aware of what presented a threat. And does that make sense to you?
No, I mean, I understand what they're saying, but I don't think that this change has any bearing on that. Basically, what all this is doing is saying that when we're going to look at the potential for an air emission to have an impact on groundwater quality, because of the nature of these substances and the fact that when we do set standards for them, and because they are bioaccumulators, it's often necessary to set, as we have with these 4 particular compounds, a very low standard. And that's why this original bill language about, giving the agency authority to regulate air emissions, that's why it exists. And so all this is doing is expanding the universe of those. There are also thousands of perfluoroalkylated substances. So, you could say the same thing about the way the law is already. All this does is says, there are some, if you substitute one fluorine atom with a hydrogen, now it's not a perfluoroalkylated substance. Now it's a polyfluoroalkylated substance. And all this is saying is that group of chemicals as a class needs to be potentially subject to this air regulation if the agency determines through all the standard procedures that we would go through that there needs to be a regulation of one or more of those substances. So it's just basically acknowledging that perfluorochemicals is too narrow a term, that it doesn't include the whole family of substances that we may have concerns about.
If I may follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would, DES certainly has proven its capability of being able to review the science and determine standards as things emerge. The second thing that was kind of represented was that there was a desire for a carve out for certain kind of uses. And I wonder, are you comfortable with having legislative language carve out that kind of preempts the department from, being able to evaluate and determine whether something potentially does emerge as a threat?
I'm not sure what that means. In my view, I'm not sure. I can't imagine a scenario where if a particular substance that was going to be emitted through the air was going to create groundwater contamination that exceeded duly promulgated standards, why we would want to carve that out. I can't envision a scenario where that would be the case.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, is Stephen still around? Stephen Rosato?
I believe so. Let me check. Yes, he is.
Okay, Stephen, are you there?
I am. Thank you.
I don't know if you've been listening, but I just your take on our conversation.
Well, I guess our language wouldn't or doesn't suggest carve outs based on their uses. I was referencing pesticides, pharmaceuticals, just as examples of the types of products. We were doing it based on the physical state or the fact that it's a polymer versus a monomer. A polymer is not going to dissolve in water. The focus of this bill is to look at air emissions that could contribute to water contamination. And our point is, if you don't have the methods to measure the substance, then there's really not very much you can do. The bill as written suggests that you have to sample stacks for PFAS, which are defined in the bill as per and polyfluorinated substances, which, as you said, as has been indicated, could be, according to EPA, 9,200 substances. So this is suggesting that you've got a sample for all 9,200. What we're saying is, let's stick to those substances that we can measure using validated methods. That will increase over time. We're not limiting it to a particular set of chemicals. We're saying if you can measure it, if there's methods to measure it, then you should measure it, and then act accordingly if it's found to be contributing to surface water. That's all we're suggesting. We are not suggesting carve outs. We're not trying to limit what DES can look at, except those that they can those that can be measured with validated methods.
Okay, so if something's in the air and it mixes with water, is that considered a bioaccumulator? I'm not a
No, bioaccumulator is, when it stays in your body, and we know that certain PFAS will accumulate in the body, and it's not true for the class of chemistry.
All right, just curious as to what that was. Okay, so you do agree, though, that this changes the language or the nomenclature of, a necessary change. Do you agree with that?
We are, yeah. PFC is an older term. PFAS is the modern term, which is more descriptive. What we're trying to do is to help the state focus its resources on those PFAS that are that you can do something about, that you can measure, that you can determine whether there's action necessary.
I guess what I'm trying to do is just tease out what is the drawback from just leaving it as it is? Is there a financial, or is there a waste of resources?
I guess, I mean, the fact of the matter is, you can't really, of the 9,000, you can't measure the vast majority of them. What we're saying is, let's stick to what we can measure, and that will increase over time.
I see. All right, and is the prime sponsor still available?
Okay, Representative Rung, yes, she is still here.
Okay, I'd like you to give her the last word.
Representative, yep.
Thank you very much, Senator Evart. As Mr. Wimsatt said of DS, this is a pretty straightforward bill. It's just describing a class of chemicals based on their chemistry, their general chemical formulation. Some are hazardous, some may be proven in the future to be hazardous, and this bill accounts for that. If there's more than one peer-reviewed study that shows that one of these 9,000 PFAS is hazardous to public health or to the environment, it allows DES to regulate them if necessary. And I do want to correct something that was said earlier by the lobbyist for the American Chemistry Council. Polymers do dissolve in water. There are many, many, many polymers that dissolve in water. So I think what's important is to rely on science, let this be science driven. And I think Mr. Wimsatt is probably the best one to make that judgment in DES. They're the New Hampshire's Department of Environmental Services. They support this bill. I support this bill. And I hope that the Senate follows the House and passes it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, and I'm sorry for dragging this on.
That's okay.
Senator Waters.
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that. So you heard Mr. Wimsatt say that this is really no change in terms of how they would, which chemicals they have to look at and evaluate, and that they're quite capable of doing whatever needs to be done. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, it is. This bill just specifies that the study has to be peer reviewed, and that it is referring to PFCs as PFAS. We're following national, international, and scientific communities in having a standardized reference to this class of chemicals.
Thank you.
Karen, any further testimony?
I have no further hands raised.
All right, so we will close the hearing on 271, and we'll open up 135. HB
Okay.
135.
Okay, the prime sponsor, the Representative Bohm. All right, Representative, you should be able to unmute.
Hey, Representative, how you doing?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Evart and members of the Energy and Natural Resource Committee. I am Ralph Bohm, Hildurham District 20, Town of Litchfield. But before I start, I'd like to thank Senator Gray and Senator Perkins Poker for voting for my bill this morning. I'm also a member of the PFOA Commission, as is Senator Gary Daniels and Senator Sharon Carson, and Representative Wrong and Mindy Messimer, who had testified in the previous vote. This bill passed the House on the voice vote. Unfortunately, in the House, it was really in the wrong committee. It was in Judiciary, and it should have been in Resources, like the other PFOA bills. Anyway, so as you may be aware, places in Wales, in Litchfield, Londonderry, Merrimack, Bedford, and Manchester have been affected by water pollution caused by PFAS pollutants. And like Senator Evart, I will not try to pronounce what that is. Other towns may also be affected. This bill, not just for us, but for any future companies that are found to be guilty of any pollution. We don't know what's coming out of that stack or going into the water is going to be a pollutant in the future or not. As you can see, the bill does the following. Responsible party will be required to connect the residents or business to a commercial or municipal water supply. They should supply drinking water to those infected until hookup is done. If the connection cannot be made in 6 months, the company will be required to connect the whole house filter and maintain such filter until the water is be found to be an acceptable level of that pollutant. There are people in some towns now that have been on bottled drinking water for more than 2 years. This water is provided free to them by a contract with Monadnock Water, paid for by the St. Domain in this case. After connecting to a commercial water, the polluting company shall pay the water bill for 2 years based on the average usage for similar residents or businesses. That was amended from 5 to 2 by the House, or until the property is sold. Also, Michael Wimsatt has a proposed amendment. I looked at it. I don't see anything that wrong with it, so he'll probably testify in this. So thank you, and I will take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. And oh man, you know what these communities have been through is just incredible. This is one of the reasons that Senator Morse and I put together that the fund, the bonded fund to help people out, and our action today, we hope will help some of the private well owners as well. This is a couple questions about how this would work. Did you get some concerns in the House about how the DES would determine, what criteria they use to determine somebody was responsible? And since you might have multiple parties, how they'd apportion that out, or, just how would that get done?
I think I wasn't at the hearings and Judiciary, but I think maybe some of that had come up. But I think it's just from other testimony I've been listening to for the last hour, I think the commissioner of DES can really determine who, and for example, in this case with Saint Gobain, it's quite obvious that they were the ones dumping the PFOAs in the air and in the water. And I understand there's some work being done in Milford on another company that's doing something entirely different that may be also polluting. So I think it's quite easy for DES to determine who, I mean, by what the product is producing and water, they can do that. And like you mentioned, in Litchfield, all this was done in Litchfield by, forcing the company to do this by putting in the well, I mean, replacing the wells with hooking up to commercial, supplying the drinking water. The only problem we've had in Litchfield we still have some people going through that process, is paying for the water bill, which they never had before. And that was one of the things we put this bill in. But like I said, it was a voice vote in the House. I think nobody wanted to be on the record of being against it. So I think DES is capable of determining who.
If I may follow up, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, they're very capable. I just wonder, there's obviously lawsuits galore going to come if DES takes action. But so my other question is, I'm thinking about the asbestos trust fund, how we've dealt with that over the years. In that, let's say there's determinations made, but one or two or three of the companies or entities responsible are bankrupt or have no assets at all. And then you might end up with somebody who is a minor contributor having to fund the whole thing. And I just wanted, the language of the bill just really didn't make really very clear about, this requirement shall pay everything. Well, I don't know, who has what assets there. Did that kind of come up in the?
I see that problem, which is why I've been sort of against, let's not everybody all of a sudden jump on Saint Gobain because they can easily just go bankrupt. They're not a DuPont, which was happening in West Virginia when they had those lawsuits. There was a TV show, Dark Waters, it was a documentary that was on one of the cable channels recently about the lawsuits in West Virginia against DuPont, and DuPont could care less. I mean, they had a lot of money and the lawsuits didn't really hurt them at all. But I can see, but that's why I think, you've got to be very careful on that, on how do you approach it. But in this case, like I said, Litchfield, all this was done by Saint Gobain. They paid for all that. They did all that, so they can do it. It's just that we need to stop them from continuing to do it. And I think this kind of language will mainly put more of a pressure on companies. Hey, let's not do this. We can really be in trouble. So I think, the language, if there are multiple companies, that can be, I think DES can say, you're doing this, you're doing this. But I don't think there's really that many companies. In this case, it's only the one. And it's amazing how it works because, like I said, I'm on the commission and we're hearing all these stories. So anyway, I think DES should be able to take care of it. Like I said, there will be lawsuits, but then we have the law. So we'll see.
Just one more follow, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So, I don't mean to go off in speculative ways here, but with the firefighting foams, for example, those might have a municipal source. And so I'm just wondering too, what happens if that's the case and there's potential, protection from liability for municipalities from certain kinds of suits, or I just don't know. I wondered if that came into the consideration of what do you do if the source was actually a municipality?
Well, that's not a company, but
gotcha. All right.
Yeah, and the thing is, then I think your trust fund you mentioned would probably help on that.
Yeah, and maybe the company that created the firefighting foam. So, anyways, I'm just sorry to go down these rabbit holes, but I appreciate your following me down them.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Thank you, Representative Bohm.
Thank you.
Up next, I have Mike Wimsatt. Mike?
Welcome back, Mike.
Yes, good afternoon again. For the record, my name is Mike Wimsatt, Service Director of the Waste Management Division for New Hampshire DES. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on House Bill 135. The department is not taking a position on this bill. We're neutral on this bill, but I did want to speak with the committee members because I did call the sponsor, Representative Boehm, just a little while ago. In review of this here at the department, we did notice that it occurred to us on analysis this morning that perhaps the language of the bill doesn't actually accomplish what Representative Boehm is trying to accomplish here and the other bill sponsors are trying to accomplish. Our read was that it was, as I think Representative Boehm has indicated in his introduction of the bill, is that was really looking to have parties who are responsible for contamination of private drinking water wells be responsible to connect those users to a public water supply, or in the cases not being able to do it on time, to provide a point of entry treatment system. And the way that we see, upon reading the bill, the way it's structured, I'm not sure it does that, because it comes out, it amends RSA 45, which is the State's Safe Drinking Water Act. And the State Safe Drinking Water Act really applies to regulated public water systems, not to private wells. So we're concerned that, you know, upon noticing it, even though we're neutral on this bill, because we noticed it, we wanted to bring this to Representative Boehm's attention. We did develop some very brief language that would address that, and I've shared that with Representative Boehm. So I just want to let the committee members know that, you know, and that Representative may want to seek someone who could potentially propose an amendment to address those language concerns. So that was my reason for wanting to address the committee today.
Thank you, Mike. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Cameron?
All right, up next I have David Creer.
Welcome back, David.
Hi, thank you very much. Once again, for the record, I am David Creer, Director of Public Policy at the Business and Industry Association of New Hampshire. We oppose House Bill 135. There's several significant issues within this bill. The biggest one being that the way we read it, it allows the Department of Environmental Services to unilaterally determine that a business has polluted. So there's no due process here for the business to offer into their own evidence. It's just DES can say, we've conducted our own investigation, we've decided you polluted, and then here's the remedy for that. And it's quite an expensive remedy. The first chance they would get to actually defend themselves would have to be through an appeal process. Second, the bill would require that the business attach any of these affected wells to a commercial or municipal water supply within 6 months. This is a pretty quick time frame to do that type of work, especially as you get into more rural communities. You know, it's one thing if you know, a section of Manchester needs to be attached to Manchester's water system, but it's completely another issue if, you know, you get to attach one of the more rural communities to a water system that could be miles and miles away. Third, the bill doesn't take into account the costs of actually running its own private, or the cost of a well owner running their own private well. So it requires that, I guess in the interest of justice, to pay water bills that a well owner would not have previously had to pay. But running a private well is also not free. It does have some costs associated with it. This bill does not account for that. They would then have to pay for the entire water bill as well. But again, the big issue here is the lack of due process, making, you know, this would make New Hampshire a very non-business friendly state, and businesses would look to move out if they knew that this is how they will be treated. With that, any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But that'll conclude my testimony.
Thank you, David. Do you have any suggestions as to fixing the due process section of the bill?
Unfortunately, I don't at this time. I think it's a pretty significant part of the way the bill is written, so it would take quite a substantial work to reframe it to fix that issue.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions from Senator Perkins Quokka?
Yeah, thank you, David, for your testimony. I'd be curious if you've heard about, and maybe you don't based on your previous answer, but any procedures in other states for sort of how this is being handled in a way that was negotiated perhaps with the business community.
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for the question. I don't know of any other states that are handling this particular issue this way. I think the way that these things are normally handled would kind of be a way that they've been handled in New Hampshire in the past, which is the business would work with the department to determine fault and the potential remedy that would come from this. This attempts to do both and change the way that's done. I think St. Gobain is a great example of, they had a agreement with the Merrimack Village Water District to start paying for PFAS remediation in that water supply and hooked up nearby houses to that. This bill would see to kind of eliminate that process where a business works with the community and with the department.
Yeah, thank you. Because, I think we all agree that remediation is important and it needs to get done. But I thought a couple of points you made were important ones. So I guess I'd be curious if you are interested in working through some new language or, just sort of how to move forward with some of the points you raised.
Sure, I'd be happy to help. And obviously BIA is more about our members than us as an organization. We have some members who are very smart, very capable, and I'm sure would be willing to help as well, kind of draft language and kind of come up with a solution if that's what's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Being none. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much.
The next person I have signed up to speak is Peter Miller.
Welcome, Peter. Is this an advertisement?
Hello?
Hello.
Can I be heard? Am I audible? Thank you. So my name is Peter Miller. I'm a resident of Durham. This is just a bill that caught my attention, and I wanted to call in and just have very quick comments on it. But I want to thank the committee, Chairman Evart, for allowing testimony. I really like these virtual hearings, by the way. I think that they make the legislative process accessible in a way that's never been before, and I really.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Senator Gray.
Yeah.
The icon that's up on Mr. Miller's screen.
Was it a campaign thing?
Yes. Is that for a current election?
It is. I didn't realize that. I don't know.
Then I think that you should be taken off the screen now. And if you want to call back in by phone or delete that,
that's fine.
But it is not appropriate for a Senate hearing.
I didn't know that it was up. So I'll check the email to see if I got the phone number. I don't have a phone number.
If it's all right, committee, I will email you, Peter Miller, or give you a call and work with you on maybe finding a route to call in, if that's all right.
That sounds fine. I can't see anything. So.
Yep, I'll help you.
Thank you.
I do have two individuals with hands raised who we can go to while that's taken care of.
Okay.
Representative Rosemary Rung.
Representative Rung.
Thank you, committee. For the record, which I didn't state at the previous bill, I'm Rosemary Rung. I represent Merrimack, which is Hillsborough 21. I just want to respond to the previous speaker. He was talking about the Merrimack Village District. The wells that far exceeded the EPA's advisory for PFOA, the Merrimack Village District and Sen Gobain reached a settlement agreement to have a filtration plant designed and constructed for those two wells. The costs of actually doing that far exceeded the settlement, but that's another discussion. The other 4 wells that the Merrimack Village District had in operation, which also exceeded PFAS, the community passed overwhelmingly, over 90% of the vote in favor of bonds totaling $14.3 million to design and construct PFAS filtering plants. That was mainly because the community did not want to wait for to go through litigation or other negotiations. We recognized the threat to human health, particularly following the release of the Minnesota study, which showed a very high incidence of low birth weight and preterm births because directly caused by PFAS contamination in the mother. There were some other conclusions from that study too, which alarmed us. And so the community of Merrimack just did not want to wait. We knew the quickest way to get our water cleaned was to just do the bonds ourselves, get them passed, get these plants started. And then, if we can get restitution from the polluters, then that's fine. But our primary goal was to improve the public health of our community and reduce the risk from PFAS contamination. There was another comment made about this bill may not be business friendly, but I can tell you from the experience being in Merrimack, and I've lived here since 1983, we would rather have no business than have a business that threatens our health and environment. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Cameron?
Okay, the other hand I have is Mindy Mesmer.
Welcome back, Representative.
Thank you so much, Senator Evart, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to testify. I hadn't intended to testify, but after hearing the last, representative from the BIA, I decided to say a few things. I support this bill fully. I do serve on the commission to representing the Merrimack issue here, the contamination that's happened in Merrimack. I just wanted to let Representative Bohm know that the DuPont company revenue sales is 21 billion, whereas the revenue of Saint-Gobain is $38 billion in sales. So they're not going to be going out of business anytime soon. They're a Fortune 500 international company. And I just wanted to correct some of the things that were presented by the BIA as well regarding the due process issue. And I'm positive that the DES is capable of assessing the appropriate or assigning the appropriate polluter here in terms of the scientific evidence that they collect in terms of the groundwater hydrogeology, the air emissions. They've done air modeling. They fully understand and know and can pinpoint the source of these chemicals that are polluting people's water. And I agree, as Representative Bohm stated, that many people in the Merrimack area, especially people who don't live closer to the water lines, have been on bottled water for several years with no end in sight. And I would contend that there are different ways that this can be addressed, either by attaching someone to a water line, but also there are these things called point of entry systems, which can be installed for around $4,000 or $3,500 in a person's home, which treats the water as it comes into the person's home from their private well. And that, in fact, has been paid for in places like Oscoda, Michigan, where the Air Force has determined that it's their responsibility to put point of entry systems into people's homes where they have contaminated the water with these AFFF PFAS foams. So it is possible, and it has been done. In fact, I've purchased a system like that myself for my own home. So and when we talk about business friendly, that was something that really resonated with me. Those people that are sitting there with bottled water in Merrimack, their property is devalued by no fault of their own. And they're sitting there with bottled water. If they attempt to sell their house and people understand that those PFAS chemicals are polluted in their water, that they're on bottled water, I think that devalues their property. And with a point of entry system installed by the polluter to correct that situation, they can then recover the full value of their own personal property. So this is really about allowing the process to continue without being dragged out in court. The DES is fully capable of assessing the scientific evidence to assign liability or responsibility to these polluters. And I just want to close by saying I really fully support this bill And thank you to the committee, and would address any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Representative. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Senator Evart, those are all of the hands I have. I'm told Mr. Miller should be calling in right now.
Okay.
I just got off the phone with him just a few moments ago, so I'm hopeful he'll be here relatively shortly.
Or give him a minute because I want to go into exec soon.
Yep, there he is.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Miller, you should be able to unmute. You might have to dial *6 on the phone. All right. It looks
Hello,
like
everyone.
Hello.
All right. Thank you for the second chance. So for some of us, it's still pretty new and we're trying to figure it all out. Again, my testimony is quite quick. Thank you, Chairman Evart, for allowing testimony and for taking testimony, and Representative Bam for sponsoring the bill. Senator Perkins Quokka for being my representative in the New Hampshire Senate. Senator Gray, you're looking good with the big beard there. No shave since last March, I'm going to take it. My point is really very straightforward and simple. It's just that I think this is the kind of situation that the public expects government to take care of before it comes to, realizing that a mess has been made and no one's there to pay for it. We know, we have experience with pollution. We know that companies make a mess while making their profits, and then they go away and they leave the mess for other people to clean up. So they privatize their profit, but then they socialize the risk and they make taxpayers and residents pay the cost for their mess. So I just calling to say that I support Representative Bem's effort to ensure that this doesn't happen anymore. And I hope the committee does find a way to make sure that polluters are held accountable and that the public doesn't end up having to pay for the messes that they create. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Privatize the profits and socialize the what?
Socialize the cost.
The cost.
Right? Socialize the cost and privatize the profit. And that's not the way it should be.
Very creative. Thank you. Seeing no questions. And Cameron, anybody else? Nobody else has their hand raised?
There are no hands raised, Senator Evart.
I will close the hearing on HB 135 and see if we can't get through an executive session if there's a motion to move into exec.
Move to go into executive session.
And nodded by Senator Perkins.
I'll second.
And Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
And Senator Evart, yes. Are we ready to move on that bill that we were working on? All right, let's finish what we did there. And so there is an amendment. And you want to put the amendment back up with all its beautiful details?
Give me one moment. That's my headphones.
If
I believe that was House Bill 235.
135, I think we at least need to look at the BIA's
due process situation.
Sufficient language or whatever to look at that. It was only presented to us today.
Right. Wait a second.
I think we're going back to 235. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about this amendment.
I thought that's what we were.
Yes.
I wanted to finish what we started.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So no, this is where we're at, right? This is what the.
This is the first bill hearing that we had today, and then this is the amendment that Senator Waters and Senator Morse wanted to attach.
Yes, I wanted to finish this first.
Yep, sure. So I spoke with Mike Wimsatt by phone and with Josh Elliott. And their suggested language, give me a moment here, I just want to pull it up.
Griffin, there's
Yes.
no way I can read that.
Yep, I can. I will zoom in on that. Is that better?
Yeah.
One more time.
All right.
Yeah, really.
There we
Don't
go.
move it around too much, just a little bit.
Yep. All right, we good?
Yeah, don't move it anymore.
I'm not moving anything. So as you can see on lines 9 to 11, there's that hanging parentheses. After speaking with Josh and Mike Wimsatt from DES, they suggested the following language to read. Communities across the state have been impacted by perfluorochemical contamination, largely through no fault of their own. Perfluorochemicals are a class of chemicals that are part of a larger group of chemicals called per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, parentheses PFAS. That would be it. No, the language starting on line 12, the cost of remediating this contamination, nothing changes there. It's just restructuring those lines from 9 to 11.
All right, I'll move the committee amendment to do that.
I will second, and that means the whole amendment now with that correction, right?
Yep, the whole amendment, nothing else would change with the amendment. It would attach to House Bill 235 with the change I just read out loud.
With the polyfluoroalkyl.
Got it.
Okay.
I just can't pronounce it.
I just want to say it right. That's all. That's why I said that. All right. So any further discussion? Seeing none, Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Senator Evart, yes. And so
I'll move on to pass as amended.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Gray. Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Senator Evart, yes. Who would like to take this out? Senator Waters. All right. That one's done. My first priority for myself, I'd like to see, I'd like discussion on 315. I thought that was a good bill. Any discussion on House Bill 315? All right. And now we have an amendment that I'd like to attach to that, which is Senate Bill 109, which we have tabled in the Senate, but I'd like the language to be put on 315. And any discussion? As you can see, we have a lot of co-sponsors with this amendment.
That's a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So have you had an opportunity to talk with House members about this, the chairman?
No, I have not talked with the House members at all. I know that they're very much in favor of 315. And
yeah, I'm just suggesting that perhaps that we could have a conversation with Chairman Vose because they won't have had a House hearing on this bill and I just want to have. I think we should have that opportunity for a conversation at some point. But I would be happy to move the amendment.
I would like to move the amendment and end the bill if at all possible, but
yeah.
So, okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
make a motion to move the amendment.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'm trying to track the process, Chairman. So I understand that we wanted to add the language of SB 109, but I was just corresponding a little bit with Griffin just to make sure I've got it clear. And it seems like there was some language about utility property tax that was changed, and I just
Yes,
need to
I
understand
believe-
where that is so I can.
Griffin, yeah, you want to scroll that in there?
Thanks.
So you should see it in section 12 of the amendment on line 5 on page 2.
Section 12 of the amendment, line 5, page 2.
It's on the screen, right?
It should be.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are seeing it.
Do you see it,
Yes.
Senator? Are you comfortable with that?
I am. Thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to know exactly what I was voting on here. Okay.
Further discussion? All right, Senator Waters,
Yes.
Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Cuoca,
Yes.
Senator Avard, yes. And on the entire bill being passed, is there a motion to move it forward?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Cuoca, Senator Perkins Cuoca?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't hear you. And Senator Avard, yes. Who would like to take this out?
Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I don't want to be greedy. I don't take too many out, but thank you very much.
But you know, you've this is terrific what you've done on 109, and I hope that this will be successful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And so moving that forward, 251. Is there a motion on 251, the systems benefit charge bill?
Did you mean House Bill 351, Senator?
House bill. My apologies. Yes.
I would move ITL.
Is there a second?
Sorry, Chairman, which bill?
351. 250.
Okay.
351. Yeah.
What?
Is it 351?
It's House Bill 351. House
Thank
Bill
you. Yeah,
351.
Okay.
And
I will second Senator Waters' motion.
Okay, let's discuss this. Thoughts?
This is Jim. In my notes, I guess I would rather re-refer it than kill it. But
If that's the pleasure of the committee, that's fine with me. It may be moot by the time it gets considered again.
That's
but I think, you know, perhaps out of deference to the vice chairman, that's what we should do. And I'd be happy to withdraw my motion.
The second accepts.
Okay.
And I'll make the motion to re-refer.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none. Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Cuoca,
Yes.
Senator Avard, yes. Okay, is Senator Bradley available?
He is, but I'm sorry, who wants to take House Bill 351 to the floor?
Senator Gray would like to take that one off.
All right, and then I'll bring in Senator Bradley. Senator Bradley, you should be able to unmute.
Good afternoon. How are you all doing?
Yes, wonderful. How are you doing, Senator?
Great.
250?
Thank you very much. I have worked with Representative Pearl, who chairs the Environment and Agriculture Committee in the House, on the following amendment. I think as Senator Avard, Gray, and Waters know, because you've had to listen to me for 4 years, talk about animal cruelty issues, and Senator Perkins Cuoca, I guess you get to listen to me now. This has been one of the most hotly contested issues in front of the legislature over the last few years. It goes back to the Great Dane case in Wolfboro. That's how I got involved with the Humane Society. But it wasn't just the Great Dane case. It were several other animal cruelty cases. And New Hampshire, at least in my view, sort of had gotten a black mark in terms of how we dealt with animal cruelty. So come to find out, when I first introduced cost of care and pet vendor legislation, how controversial it was. I thought it would be relatively easy after the Great Dane case. So did not have a meeting of the minds in 2017. Bill died. 2019, we were able to get legislation passed that lowered the number of cats or dogs that could be transferred to 25, and then after that you'd have to get a license. The dog owners of the Granite State and others were not real thrilled with that, and it's gone back and forth, and this bill, as Representative Pearl introduced it, would have raised the limit up to 35. So in the spirit of trying to find a compromise that everybody can live with, and we stop arguing about animal cruelty, but allow Commissioner Jasper and the Department of Agriculture to better regulate this, and just trying to put it in the rearview mirror, I agreed with Representative Pearl to split the difference on the number of dogs, cats, or it was dogs and cats to 30 as a compromise, and try to stop the fighting between the various groups. It's really the definition of a compromise. So that's the first piece in the amendment, section 1. Section 2, occasionally a pet vendor, a breeder of cats or dogs might trigger, by virtue of what might happen with their litters, a number greater than 30. It happens. And as long as it's a once in a 4-year process, I thought as part of a compromise, there could be an exception from licensure if that happened, every 4 years and was not a recurring event. And that seems reasonable to me. So I did receive an email from Representative Pearl that indicated the dog owners of the Granite State are in support of this amendment. It's a compromise. I think it's a good compromise, and I hope that the committee can support it. The last section 4, well, let me talk about section 3 for a minute too. This just makes clear the zoning issue. In the prior pieces of the legislation, apparently that wasn't clear. So that makes clear the intent that it's not going to be judged a business. And then section 4, Commissioner Jasper asked for the ability to suspend a license as opposed to either issuing or revocation. And that seems reasonable based on the input of Commissioner Jasper. So I hope that the committee can support this. I'm in full support of it. And I think as Senator Waters knows, because we were on a Zoom the other night with the Humane Society, I think Senator Waters and I and others have labored for a long time to try and bring New Hampshire better up to speed, if you will, dealing with animal cruelty issues. And I think that a compromise that everybody can live with will go a long ways to making that happen.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. Questions from the committee? That sounds good. Are we ready to move on this? Is there a motion to move on the amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none. Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Senator Avard. Senator Bradley.
I don't know if I have
Oh, that's right, you don't count, sorry.
But I do want to say thank you very much. I know it's a little unusual to have a sponsor of an amendment Zoom in like this, but I
That's helpful.
think we're doing a great job here. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right, Senator Bradley. You just pull the leash a little bit and say heel, and we'll get your amendment done, right?
We actually appreciate it. This is a long time coming. We've heard some amazing testimony on this. All right, so on the overall bill, I guess.
I'll move to pass as amended.
Second.
Okay, we're going to start with Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yes.
Senator Avard, yes. Who would like to take this out?
Well, I could do it, but I don't, the others are welcome to it.
Senator Perkins Quokka, would you like to take this out? I don't give you
Sure.
much. Pardon me? You
Sure.
Okay, we'll have you take this out. All right, and moving right along, I think 338 has an FN on it. Senator Gray, what are your thoughts on 338 with the felonies, the Class B felony, Class A felony, all that?
Yeah, that was my problem with this one, is that going from a felony and then from a B felony to an A felony, and having the punishment for a B felony 3.5 to 7, and then a Class A felony 7.5 to 15. And we're taking this from a misdemeanor to that. Just didn't seem reasonable to me, and therefore I can't support the bill the way it is.
Do you have any suggestions as far as the penalties?
If I were to do it, I would either leave it as a misdemeanor or have it as a third offense, graduate it to a Class B felony at the most. But I'm not really excited about the felony charge.
Senator Waters?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, we heard about the value here. And that certainly makes sense because it's in the training, right? I mean, we heard about that. So I wondered, Senator Gray, if we, we got misdemeanor for the first offense, no problem, right?
Right.
And I just wonder whether we should say Class B felony for the second and subsequent offenses. We're talking about thousands of dollars here. So if you stole something like that more than once, you'd certainly, in other theft provisions in statute, but.
That would be considered grand larceny, right?
Yeah, we'd get up there.
It doesn't
I understand your concern, Senator Gray, but it is a valuation issue, and the Class A felony, I think that is a little much myself, but I don't know. I'm just trying to find a way to compromise.
Maybe we can ask the attorney in the group, and what's the middle ground between Class B felony and a misdemeanor?
You're asking the wrong attorney, because this attorney is a corporate attorney. So I unfortunately am not the right person to ask.
I think again, I just trying to remember from other statute, Senator, but I think that you go from misdemeanor to Class B. I mean, that's basically the step up.
I guess if we made it Class B on the third or successive, I could go there.
Well, let's go there. I mean, it'd be good to pass the bill, huh? And if it ends up at a committee or conference, we can have more discussion. But I don't know what others think, but.
So Griffin, if we have an amendment on line 4 that says misdemeanor for the first and second offense, and a Class B felony for the third and subsequent offenses, I think that is someplace that we can get to.
Yep. Let me just, if I might, just read that back. Whoever steals a dog shall be guilty of a misdemeanor for the first and second offense, and a Class B felony for the third and subsequent offenses, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So would we use the word mandatory Class B felony for the third offense?
No, we don't do that.
No,
I don't think we use mandatory. I just think it's the discretion of the judge and the district attorney as to what level of charge.
Okay.
But
I'm good with that. I think it's a fair compromise.
Move the committee amendment.
Seconded by
I'll second.
Senator Waters. Further discussion. Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yep.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
Senator Avard, yes. And motion on the bill?
Ought to pass as amended.
I'll second.
Seconded by Senator Waters. Further discussion, seeing none. Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Waters,
Yep.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and Senator Avard, yes. Who would like to take this out? Oh, come on now. Please.
Oh, I'll do it. I mean, you got to have a name attached to it. And
Yep. Senator Waters.
I'll read what Griffin writes for me.
I appreciate the compromise, Senator Gray, and working with us on this particular bill. Is there any other discussion on anything else that comes to mind? Seeing none, would I have a motion to get out of exec?
Move to come out of executive session.
I'll second.
Senator Waters. Discussion. Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Senator Avard, yes. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Waters. Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And Senator Avard, yes. Thank you all. You're champions and hard workers. I appreciate you. Until then, next time.